I always knew I was different. The whispers stopped when I entered rooms, the family photos where I somehow stood apart from everyone else, the way my father's eyes never quite met mine when he spoke. But nothing prepared me for that rainy Tuesday afternoon when I found the letter hidden in my mother's dresser drawer. My hands trembled as I unfolded the yellowed paper, dated exactly 1 month before my birth. "The child is not his," it read in my grandmother's handwriting. "We must never speak of this again." I collapsed onto the bedroom floor, suddenly understanding a lifetime of cold shoulders and distant birthdays. For 37 years, I had been living a lie, carrying the invisible burden of being unwanted in my own home. My father, the man who reluctantly taught me to ride a bike but never attended a single school play, wasn't my father at all. And my mother had buried this secret so deeply that it had poisoned our family for decades. I traced my finger over my grandmother's signature, her handwriting so familiar from holiday cards that always seemed to arrive late for me, but never for my sister. The truth crashed through me like a wrecking ball. I wasn't just the black sheep of the family. I was never truly part of it at all. That night at dinner, I watched them all. My father reading his newspaper, my mother arranging the food on plates with mechanical precision, my sister chatting about her promotion, and wondered how many family dinners had been built on this foundation of lies. I excused myself before dessert and made a phone call that would change everything. "I'd like to order a DNA test," I said quietly into the phone, stepping out onto the back porch where no one could hear me. "And I need the results as soon as possible." I remember the exact moment when the email notification arrived with my DNA results. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen, my coffee growing cold beside me. My finger hovered over the mouse, hesitating. Did I really want to know? Would confirmation of what I already suspected in my heart make the pain any more bearable? I clicked anyway. The document loaded, and there it was in clinical, irrefutable black and white, 0% paternal match. The man who had reluctantly walked me down the aisle at my wedding, who had awkwardly patted my shoulder when I graduated college instead of hugging me like the other parents. He had known all along that I wasn't his. My mother had lied to me my entire life, creating an elaborate fiction that had left me feeling worthless and unwanted for as long as I could remember. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, avoiding my own reflection. Who was I now? Whose blood ran through my veins? I called in sick to work and drove aimlessly for hours, eventually finding myself parked outside my childhood home. The same home where my sister had been given the master bedroom while I slept in what was essentially a converted closet. Where my father, no, not my father, had yelled at me for the smallest infractions while my sister could do no wrong. Where my mother had watched it all happen, her silence a form of betrayal more painful than any words could have been. I sat there until the sun began to set, formulating a plan. I would confront them, all of them, but I needed more than just a DNA test. I needed the whole truth. And I knew exactly where to start. My grandmother's attic, where family secrets went to collect dust. The annual family Christmas dinner was in 3 days. It would be the perfect stage for the truth to finally come out. Let me know in the comments, which country or city are you watching this from? The drive to my grandmother's house the next morning felt like entering enemy territory. This woman, whose perfume always made me sneeze and whose critical eyes had followed me through childhood, had been the keeper of the secret that defined my life. I parked on the street instead of the driveway. I didn't want to announce my presence. My grandmother was at her weekly bridge game. I still remembered her schedule from the years I'd lived with her after college, when no one else would take me in. Too difficult, my mother had said. Too sensitive, my father, not my father, had agreed. The spare key was still hidden under the ceramic frog by the back door. Inside, the house smelled of lavender and old books, a scent that used to comfort me before I knew about the lies. I moved silently up the narrow staircase to the attic, feeling like a thief in my own family history. The pull-string light revealed stacks of boxes labeled meticulously in my grandmother's precise handwriting. I went straight for the one marked Eleanor Personal, my mother's name. The first thing I found was a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. Love letters, dated 9 months before my birth, from a man named Thomas. My heart raced as I read his passionate words, his plans for their future, his excitement about her pregnancy. This was him, my real father, a man I had never met, whose existence had been completely erased from my life. The next item hit me like a physical blow. A photograph of my mother, young and beautiful, sitting on a park bench with a handsome dark-haired man. I turned it over. Eleanor and Thomas, spring 1985. I had his eyes, his smile. I sank to the dusty attic floor, holding the photo against my chest. Deeper in the box, I found the final piece. My original birth certificate, with Thomas Martin listed as my father. And beside it, an amended certificate issued 3 months later, with my mother's husband's name instead. They hadn't just lied to me. They had falsified legal documents to cover up the truth. The betrayal was total and complete. I was so absorbed in my discovery that I didn't hear the car in the driveway or the front door opening. "What are you doing up there?" My grandmother's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a knife. I gathered the evidence, the letters, the photo, the birth certificates, and descended the stairs slowly, each step bringing me closer to a confrontation decades in the making. She stood at the bottom, her face pale, but her posture rigid as always. "Those are private family matters," she said, reaching for the papers in my hands. I pulled back. "Yes, they are. And I am family, aren't I? Or am I just the unwanted reminder of my mother's affair?" "You don't understand," she said, her voice suddenly tired. "We were protecting everyone. Your father—" "He's not my father," I interrupted. "And he knew it. He knew it every time he called me worthless, every time he ignored me at family gatherings, every time he made me feel like I didn't belong. He took you in," my grandmother hissed. "He gave you his name when he could have thrown your mother out. You should be grateful." Grateful? The word tasted like poison. For a lifetime of being treated like garbage? For being made to feel like a burden? For never knowing who I really am? I held up the photo. "What happened to Thomas? Does he know about me? Is he still alive?" The flicker in her eyes told me everything. "He's alive," she whispered. "He lives across town. Has for years." The room spun around me. All this time, my real father had been minutes away, and they had kept us apart. "Why?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "Why would you do this to me?" "Your mother made her choice," she said. But there was something new in her voice. Doubt, perhaps even regret. She chose her marriage, her security. Thomas was nobody, a musician with no prospects. Your father offered stability. And the price was my happiness? My identity? I was shouting now, years of hurt pouring out. "Does Thomas know I exist?" My grandmother looked away. "He tried to find you when you were born. Your father, your mother's husband, threatened legal action. Thomas couldn't afford to fight." I felt sick. An innocent man had been denied his child. I had been denied a father who might have loved me. "I'm going to find him," I said, heading for the door. "Wait," my grandmother called. I turned, expecting another attempt to preserve the family lie. Instead, she went to her desk and wrote something on a slip of paper. "His address," she said, holding it out. "He owns a music store downtown. But please, wait until after Christmas. Let me talk to your mother first." I took the paper but shook my head. I've waited my entire life already. I'm done waiting. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Mom wants to know if you're bringing anyone to Christmas dinner." The irony was almost too much to bear. This year, I might bring someone they never expected. Someone whose DNA matched mine. Someone who might have wanted me all along. Finding vintage vinyl and strings wasn't difficult. A quaint corner shop with instruments displayed in the window and a bell that chimed cheerfully when I pushed open the door. Inside smelled of polished wood and old records, warm and inviting in a way my childhood home never was. An older man stood behind the counter, his salt and pepper hair pulled back in a short ponytail, fingers moving deftly as he restrung a guitar. My father. My real father. I froze just inside the entrance, suddenly terrified. What if he rejected me too? He looked up and smiled, the same smile I saw in my bathroom mirror, and my doubts evaporated like morning mist. "Can I help you find something?" he asked. his voice melodic, even in ordinary conversation. "Thomas Martin?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. He nodded, setting the guitar aside. "That's me. Are you looking for lessons? I still teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays." I stepped closer, clutching my purse where I'd tucked the photograph and DNA results. "No, My carefully rehearsed speech abandoned me. "My name is Catherine. I'm Eleanor Walsh's daughter." The color drained from his face. The guitar pick in his hand clattered to the counter. "Catherine," he repeated, like he was testing the weight of my name on his tongue. "Eleanor's daughter." His eyes, my eyes, searched my face with an intensity that made my skin tingle. "I think," I said, removing the photograph from my purse and placing it on the counter between us, "that I'm your daughter too." His hand trembled as he reached for the picture. "I've imagined this moment for 37 years, he said, his voice cracking. "I never stopped hoping you'd find me. You knew about me? You wanted me?" The questions tumbled out, desperate and raw. "Of course I wanted you. I loved you before you were even born." He came around the counter slowly, like he was afraid I might disappear. "Eleanor told me you were mine. And then her husband threatened to destroy my life if I ever tried to contact either of you. I was young, broke, frightened, but I never stopped looking for glimpses of you around town. I saw you once at a school concert when you were about 10. You played the piano beautifully." "You were there?" I whispered, remembering that night, how I'd scanned the audience hoping to see my parents, only to find my mother leaving early, and my supposed father not there at all. Thomas nodded. "I came to as many public events as I could, graduations, recitals, always at a distance. I have a scrapbook." He paused, overcome. "Would you like to see it?" As he led me to a small apartment above the shop, I felt lighter than I had in years. Here was someone who had wanted me all along, who had tried to be part of my life despite everything. In his living room, surrounded by musical instruments and books, he pulled out a worn leather album. Inside were newspaper clippings of every school achievement, programs from recitals, even a distant photo of me at my high school graduation. "The local paper ran this when you got that scholarship to state," he said, pointing to a yellowed clipping. "I was so proud I told everyone who came into the shop that day." Tears streamed down my face. All this time I thought no one cared. "I cared," he said simply. "I've always cared." We talked for hours. He told me about his family, my family, about my paternal grandparents who had died never knowing they had a granddaughter, about cousins I'd never met. He played me songs he'd written over the years, including one called Catherine's Lullaby that he'd composed when my mother first told him she was pregnant. As evening fell, my phone buzzed repeatedly, messages from my mother, my sister, even my grandmother. News traveled fast in our family when it was news they didn't want spread. I ignored them all. "Will you come to Christmas dinner?" I asked Thomas impulsively. "I'm confronting them all with what I've learned. I don't want to do it alone." He hesitated. "Are you sure? That's your family. I don't want to cause more pain." "You're my family too," I said firmly. "And they're the ones who caused the pain. It's time they faced what they did to both of us." When I finally checked my messages that night, there was a voicemail from my mother, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Catherine, your grandmother called. Whatever she told you, whatever you think you know, we need to discuss this as a family. Please come home." Home, as if that house had ever truly been my home. I texted back just one line, "I'll be at Christmas dinner, and I'm bringing a guest." The next day passed in a blur of emotions and preparations. Thomas and I continued sharing stories, bridging the decades-long gap in our relationship. He showed me photographs of his parents, my grandparents, and I saw my own features reflected in their faces. That night, I dreamed of a childhood that might have been learning guitar on my father's knee, being celebrated rather than tolerated, belonging somewhere without question. On Christmas Eve, as Thomas and I drove to my mother's house for the annual family dinner, my hands shook so badly I could barely fasten my seatbelt. The GPS announced our arrival with mechanical precision, unaware of the emotional earthquake about to take place. Through the window, I could see them all gathered in the living room. My mother nervously rearranging ornaments on the tree, My sister scrolling through her phone, my grandmother sitting rigidly in her usual chair, and the man who had pretended to be my father for my entire life, drinking his customary pre-dinner scotch. "Are you ready for this?" Thomas asked gently. I took a deep breath. I've been ready my whole life. As we walked to the door, shoulder to shoulder, I realized I was no longer just seeking justice or revenge. I was reclaiming my identity, my history, my truth. And for the first time, I wasn't facing it all alone. The silence when we entered was absolute, like the moment between lightning and thunder. My mother dropped a glass ornament, which shattered on the hardwood floor. No one moved to clean it up. My sister looked up from her phone, mouth forming a perfect O of surprise. My grandmother clutched the arms of her chair, and the man who had never been a father to me slowly set down his drink, his face darkening like a gathering storm. "What is he doing here?" he demanded, not even bothering to greet me. I stepped forward, Thomas a reassuring presence at my side. "This is Thomas Martin," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "My father. My real father." "Get out of my house," the man I had called Dad spat, rising to his feet. "James, please," my mother whispered, moving toward him. She looked older suddenly, worn down by decades of deception. "No, Eleanor. I won't have him here. Not after everything." "Everything what?" I interrupted. "Everything you did to keep him from me? Or everything you didn't do as a father?" My sister stood up, always ready to defend our parents. "Catherine, you're being dramatic. This is Christmas Eve, for God's sake." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "And for once, I'm spending it with someone who actually wanted me in their life." I turned to my mother, whose hands were shaking as badly as mine had been in the car. "Why, Mom? Why did you lie to me my entire life? Why did you let him treat me like I was worthless?" She couldn't meet my eyes. "It was complicated, Catherine. We were young. Your father, James, he gave us security, respectability, and that was worth more than my happiness, my right to know who I really am." "You ungrateful little," James began, but Thomas stepped forward. "I think you've said quite enough to my daughter over the years," he said quietly, with a dignity that made James's anger seem petty and small. My grandmother rose shakily from her chair. "I told you to wait," she said to me, then turned to Thomas. "And you promised to stay away." "I never promised anything," Thomas replied. "You threatened me. There's a difference." He looked around the room, at the expensive furniture, the perfectly coordinated Christmas decorations, the family portraits where I always seemed slightly out of place. Was all this worth destroying 3 lives? No one answered. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. Finally, my sister spoke, her voice uncertain for the first time I could remember. "Is it true? Is he really your father?" I pulled out the DNA results and handed them to her. "See for yourself. 0% match with James. I had your hairbrush tested too, Lisa. We're half-siblings." She paled as she read the document. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked our mother. "No one was supposed to know," my mother whispered. "It was better that way." "Better for whom?" I demanded. "Not for me, not for Thomas. Just better for your perfect facade." James slammed his hand on the mantelpiece. "I took you in," he said through gritted teeth. "I gave you my name when I could have thrown you both out. I paid for your education, put food on your table, and reminded me every day that I was a burden." I finished. "Called me names when no one was listening. Told me I'd never amount to anything. Made me feel like there was something fundamentally wrong with me." "Do you know what that does to a child?" My mother began to cry. "Catherine, please. We can talk about this privately." "No more secrets," I said firmly. "No more lies. I deserved to know my father. He deserved to know me." Thomas touched my shoulder gently. "It's all right, Catherine. We have now. We have the future." My grandmother, ever the practical one, even in crisis, gestured to the dining room. "Dinner's getting cold. Perhaps we should sit down and discuss this civilly." The absurdity of it, suggesting we all share a meal after what had just been revealed, made me laugh, a sharp sound that contained no humor. I didn't come here to eat Christmas dinner and pretend everything's fine. I came here for answers, and for this, I pulled out an envelope and handed it to my mother. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "What is this?" "A petition for correction of birth records," I said. "I'm legally changing my name to Catherine Martin. I'm reclaiming who I should have been all along." James stepped toward me menacingly. "After everything I've done for you." Thomas moved between us. "Don't," he said simply. My sister suddenly stood up. "Stop it! All of you, just stop!" She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know, Catherine. I swear I didn't know." I believed her. Lisa and I had never been close, but I'd always attributed that to personality differences, not to the fundamental lie that separated us. "It's not your fault," I said softly. "But all those times I got special treatment. When James was harder on you." She looked devastated, and for the first time I felt a flicker of sympathy for her. She too had been living in a house built on lies. My mother approached me cautiously. "What do you want from us, Catherine?" It was the first honest question she'd asked me in 37 years. "I want you to acknowledge what you did. I want you to apologize to Thomas for keeping him from his child. I want the truth to be known among our family and friends." I took a deep breath. "And then I want to start over, on honest terms. If that's even possible." James snorted derisively. "This is ridiculous. I'm not apologizing for—" "Then we're done here," I interrupted, turning to leave. "Thomas and I will spend Christmas together, as we should have been doing all along." "Wait!" my mother cried, grabbing my arm. "Please, don't go." She looked at Thomas, really looked at him perhaps for the first time in decades. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "What we did was wrong. I was young and scared, but that's no excuse. I've regretted it every day." The room fell silent again as everyone waited for James's response. Would he continue to defend the indefensible? Would he acknowledge any part of the pain he had caused? He stared at me for a long moment, then at Thomas, his face unreadable. Then he picked up his scotch, drained it in one swallow, and walked out of the room without a word. The front door slammed behind him. My mother covered her face with her hands. My sister looked shell-shocked. My grandmother sank back into her chair. Suddenly, every one of her 80 years. And I stood there beside my real father, feeling simultaneously victorious and hollow. I had exposed the truth. I had reclaimed my identity. But the family I'd grown up with was shattering before my eyes. Was this justice or just more pain? 6 months have passed since that explosive Christmas Eve. 6 months of rebuilding, reconciling, and sometimes retreating back into old wounds. Thomas and I meet for coffee every Sunday morning now, making up for lost time with each conversation, each shared memory, each discovered similarity. He's teaching me to play guitar. I have his hands, his ear for music. Sometimes I catch him watching me with a look of wonder, as if he still can't believe I'm really in his life. My relationship with my mother is more complicated. After James stormed out that night, he didn't come back. By New Year's, he had moved in with his secretary, a cliché that surprised no one, and filed for divorce. My mother, adrift after decades of prioritizing her marriage over everything else, has been seeing a therapist. Last month, over a tentative lunch, she finally told me the full story. How she'd fallen in love with Thomas when she was young and idealistic. How her parents had pushed her toward James and his family money when she discovered she was pregnant. How she'd convinced herself that material security was more important than love. "I thought I was doing what was best for you," she said, tears tracking mascara down her cheeks. "I was wrong. So terribly wrong. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a start. My sister Lisa and I have grown closer, strangely enough. The revelation shook her perception of our family as much as mine, though in different ways. I always thought Dad just liked me better," she confessed one evening as we cleared out my old bedroom. "I never questioned why. Now I feel like my whole childhood was built on your unhappiness." "It wasn't your fault," I told her, and meant it. My grandmother is the only one who still holds herself apart, still believes the family did the right thing. "Different times," she mutters whenever the subject arises. "I've learned to accept that some people cannot change, cannot admit when they've caused harm. Her generation valued appearances above all else. But I no longer seek her approval. no longer feel diminished by her judgment. As for James, I haven't spoken to him since Christmas. Last week, his lawyer contacted me about the will. He's removing me entirely, as if he could erase me from the family just as completely as he tried to erase Thomas. I found I didn't care. The inheritance I truly wanted wasn't money or property, but my true identity, and I've claimed that already. Today is different, though. Today, all the tangled threads of my story come together in a courthouse downtown. Thomas and I arrive early, both nervous in our formal clothes. My mother is already there, sitting alone in the front row. She gives me a tentative smile. Lisa slips in just before the proceedings begin, squeezing my hand as she passes. Even my grandmother makes an appearance, sitting stiffly in the back, her disapproval evident, but her presence still somehow important. The judge enters and we all rise. He reviews the documents before him, the DNA evidence, the original birth certificate, the amended one, my petition. His expression gives nothing away. Catherine Eleanor Walsh, he says finally, using the name I've carried all my life. I've reviewed your petition for correction of birth records and legal name change. He looks up, meeting my eyes. This court finds sufficient evidence to support your claim. Your original birth certificate will be unsealed and restored to legal status, and your name will be legally changed to Catherine Eleanor Martin, as petitioned. The gavel comes down with a sharp crack that seems to echo through my entire life, dividing it neatly into before and after. Thomas grips my hand so tightly it almost hurts. Congratulations, Ms. Martin, the judge says with a small smile. The record has been corrected. Outside the courthouse, standing in the bright summer sunshine, I feel a lightness I've never known before. My mother approaches cautiously, hugging me with a whispered, "Congratulations," before stepping back to give Thomas and me space. Lisa throws her arms around me with less restraint, then surprises everyone by hugging Thomas too. "Welcome to the family," she tells him, "even if it's 37 years late." My grandmother doesn't approach, but she nods once from a distance before turning to leave. It's as close to acceptance as she'll ever come. That evening, Thomas hosts a small celebration at his apartment above the music shop. He's invited his friends, musicians and artists who welcome me without question. My mother comes, bringing a photo album I've never seen before, filled with baby pictures she'd hidden away because they showed too much resemblance to Thomas. Lisa brings her husband and children, my niece and nephew who now pepper Thomas with questions about whether he'll teach them guitar too. As the night winds down, Thomas takes out his guitar and begins to play Catherine's Lullaby, the song he wrote for me before I was born. The room falls silent as the melody weaves through the air, beautiful and bittersweet. When he finishes, he hands me an envelope. "What's this?" I ask. "Open it," he urges gently. Inside is a deed to the music shop. He's putting it in both our names. "I always planned to have something to leave you," he explains, his voice rough with emotion. "Even when I couldn't be in your life, I built this business thinking that someday, somehow, you'd know it was meant for you." I can't speak through my tears, can only hold him tightly. This father who wanted me all along. Later, as guests begin to leave, my mother pulls me aside. "I have something for you too," she says hesitantly. It's a small velvet box containing a pair of sapphire earrings I've never seen before. "Thomas gave these to me when I told him I was pregnant with you," she explains. "I couldn't wear them. James would have known they weren't from him, but I couldn't bear to part with them either. They should have been your 16th birthday present. Your something blue at your wedding." Her voice trails off. "They belong to you now." I take the earrings, these tangible symbols of what might have been, what should have been, what now is. "Thank you," I say simply. As I drive home that night, I think about the DNA test that started this journey. Science provided the proof, but the truth had always been there. In Thomas's music, in my mother's hidden photos, in James's coldness, in my own reflection. The test didn't create the truth. It merely exposed what had always existed beneath the lies. I am Catherine Martin now, daughter of Thomas, musician, survivor, the unwanted child who found her way home at last. I've learned that family isn't always who raises you or whose name you bear. Sometimes family is who recognizes themselves in your smile, who writes you lullabies before you're born, who searches for glimpses of you across crowded auditoriums, who waits patiently for decades until you find your way back to them. The DNA test proved everything, yes. But what it proved, most of all, was that love leaves traces that can never truly be erased. Not by lies, not by time, not by those who would deny it. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to follow those traces, they lead you right where you were always meant to be. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today.